When did humans first believe in ghosts? Picture this. You are an early human. It is the middle of the night. The fire is almost out. Everyone else is asleep. Then, from the darkness outside the cave, you hear a branch snap. You freeze. You look into the blackness. And then you remember something very important. Gary died 3 weeks ago. So obviously, your brain makes the calm, sensible decision and says that was Gary. And just like that, the world becomes haunted. But when did humans actually start believing in ghosts? We do not know the exact moment. There was probably no first official ghost sighting, no cave meeting where everyone voted and said, right, from now on, dead people can come back. It was probably much slower than that. A strange dream, a weird noise, a shadow near the fire, a story told at night. And slowly humans began to wonder, what if the dead are not completely gone? That question may be one of the oldest fears humans ever had. Because death is confusing. One day someone is alive. They talk, they move, they laugh. They annoy everyone by telling the same hunting story again. Then suddenly, they stop. The body is still there. The face is still there. But the person seems missing, and for early humans, that must have been terrifying. They did not have modern science. They did not have hospitals. They did not have anyone calmly explaining what had happened. They just had the person they knew, now silent. And one horrible question. Where did they go? That question is where ghosts begin. Not with white sheets, not with haunted mansions, not with someone whispering boo, but with grief, memory, fear, and the feeling that someone who is gone still somehow feels close. Then there were dreams, and dreams must have been one of the strangest things early humans experienced. Imagine someone in the tribe dies. A few nights later, you dream about them. In the dream, they are alive. They speak, they move, they look real. Maybe they even warn you about something. Then you wake up. The cave is dark. The fire is low. Everyone is asleep. And you are left thinking, that did not feel like a dream. Today, we might say your brain was processing grief. But thousands of years ago, you might think, Gary came back. And knowing Gary, he probably looked annoyed. That kind of dream could easily become a story. You tell someone the next morning, I saw him. Someone else says, I heard something last night too. Another person says, I told you we should have buried him further away. Now the whole tribe is uncomfortable. Because once one person believes the dead can return, every strange thing becomes suspicious. A shadow on the cave wall? Could be Gary. A noise outside? Could be Gary. A cold breeze? Definitely Gary. A missing piece of food? Probably not Gary, but blame him anyway. The ancient world was already scary enough. Night was darker than we can imagine now. No street lights, no torches you could just switch on, no phone screen lighting up the room, just fire and everything beyond it. And outside that firelight were animals, storms, forests, strange sounds, and things humans could not explain. So the brain had to guess. And the human brain is very good at guessing danger. Too good, sometimes. That is why a coat on a chair can look like a person. That is why a noise downstairs at midnight makes you suddenly believe in every horror film you have ever watched. Your brain would rather be wrong and scared than relaxed and eaten. That survival instinct probably helped early humans. If you heard something in the dark and ran away, you survived. If you heard something in the dark and said, probably nothing, you might become the next warning story. So humans became experts at spotting patterns, faces in shadows, meaning in sounds, messages in dreams. And sometimes, those patterns became ghosts. Not because early humans were stupid. They were trying to make sense of a world that was dangerous, confusing, and full of mystery. And death was the biggest mystery of all. We can see hints of this in the way ancient people treated the dead. Very old burials show that humans did not just abandon people who died. They placed bodies carefully. They sometimes buried people with objects. They seemed to treat the dead with meaning. Now, that does not automatically prove they believed in ghosts. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was tradition. Maybe it was just because leaving a body in camp is a terrible idea. But it does show something important. The dead mattered. They were remembered. And once humans started remembering the dead in special ways, it is easy to see how ideas about spirits and ancestors could grow. Maybe the dead needed respect. Maybe they needed rituals. Maybe they were watching. Maybe they could help. Maybe they could get angry. And nobody wants an angry ghost, especially Gary. He was difficult enough alive. As societies grew, ghost stories became more detailed. People imagined spirits returning because something was unfinished. Maybe they were forgotten. Maybe they wanted justice. Maybe they needed a proper burial. Or maybe they simply refused to leave. Which is honestly very Gary. Some ancient cultures treated ghosts like a real problem, not just something spooky. More like, someone has returned from the dead and we need to deal with this before dinner. One ancient Babylonian tablet from around 3,500 years ago may even show a ghost being led back toward the afterlife. So thousands of years ago, people were already drawing ghosts, writing about them, and trying to send them away. No horror movie, no jump scare. Just ancient people saying, please leave, properly this time. And that is why ghost stories lasted. They are not just about fear, they are about death, grief, love, guilt, unfinished business, and the strange feeling that someone can be gone, but not completely gone. That idea is comforting, but also terrifying, because maybe the people we love are still close. Unfortunately, so are the people we annoyed. That is the problem with ghosts. You do not get to choose only the nice ones. And ghost stories work because they live in uncertainty. Was that noise an animal? Was it the wind? Was it a dream? Or was it Gary dragging himself back from the afterlife because someone still owes him a proper burial? You never fully know. And that tiny gap between explanation and fear is where ghost stories live. Even today, we are not that different. We have electricity, cameras, science, phones, and people online ready to say every ghost video is just dust on a lens. But we still hear a noise at night and freeze. We still turn the light on after watching something scary. We still say, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm not going in there. That is very human. So when did humans first believe in ghosts? We will probably never know. Maybe it started before writing, before cities, before farming. Maybe it began with one dream that felt too real, one shadow that looked too human, one sound in the dark, one person saying, I saw them, and another person believing them. The first ghost probably was not floating through a castle. It probably did not rattle chains. It probably did not say boo. It may have been much simpler. A memory that would not disappear. A dead friend who still felt nearby. A noise that came at the worst possible time. And one terrified human whispering into the darkness. Gary? Whether it was a ghost, an animal, the wind, or just fear doing what fear does best, one thing is clear. Humans have been haunted for a very long time. Maybe not always by spirits, but definitely by questions. Where do people go when they die? Why do we dream about them? And why do we love scary stories, even when we know they will ruin our sleep? Maybe that is the strangest part. Humans invented ghosts to explain the dark, then spent the rest of history gathering around fires, turning the lights off, and telling the story again. And that's the story in simple terms. Tiny stickman, big questions. If this made things clearer or made you think for a second, then hit like, subscribe, and come back for the next explanation. Because there's always another strange, fascinating, or surprisingly important story waiting to be explained. See you in the next one.